Hi there. In this set of videos, we're going to be looking at landslides, or if you want a broader term, we can also say mass wasting events. Now, a landslide, this is a general term used to describe the downslope movement of soil, rock, regolith, ice, snow, and organic materials under the effects of gravity. We can also use it to describe the landform that results from this movement. The image here that you see on the screen is actually a landslide that happened in Arizona. Some of you may remember it. It was in northern Arizona on Highway 89, just south of Page. This particular part of the highway was shut down for 2 years, and it caused sort of a major transportation problem for the state because this is a major artery going north. Unfortunately, if you look at the images on the bottom, it's pretty obvious that this happened on an older landslide. So this was a reactivation of a landslide, which means this is a hazard that should have been recognized in the first place. A landslide happens along a surface of rupture. It's either a curved surface or a planar surface. And much of the material moves as a coherent or semi-coherent mass. And you don't get a lot of deformation within the body itself. It can be also other types of movement, and we're going to look at quite a few of those as we go through. Now, we can use the term landslide interchangeably with things like mass movement or slope failure. But again, these are all fairly general terms. When we actually classify types of landslides, we're going to get into a lot more specific terminology at that point. But it's really nice to know some of the basic parts of a landslide here. For instance, at the top, you have the main scarp or scar, you can hear sometimes. And that's the rock that's been exposed by after the movement. The head of the landslide is the very top, similar to what we see in rivers, and the very bottom of the landslide is called the toe, which makes a lot more sense than calling it a mouth like we do a river, right? You can also see the surface of rupture, and that's where the movement actually happens. And we're going to see that's caused by a number of different things, but you usually have a pretty solid area where that separation actually happens. Of course, one of the biggest hazards that come along with landslides are deaths. And this is a map that was created to show the number of deadly landslide events from 2004 to 2016. And you can see there's definitely a really stark difference based on where on Earth you happen to be. But you can see more than anything that China and India have far, far more of these landslides than anywhere else. But something to keep in mind is that those are the areas that have lots of mountains, in particular the Himalayas. And for India specifically, they experience a monsoon season that creates lots and lots of rain. In some parts of the Himalayas, they get over like 300 inches of rain during the monsoon season. And that extra water plus mountain areas, it all adds up to more landslides. In the U.S., we average somewhere around 5 to 10 deaths a year for landslides. So if we look at fatal landslides, this is put together by the exact same people. You can look at the number of landslides and the number of fatalities. And what's sort of interesting in both of them is you can see a pretty big jump right in the middle of the year, and that corresponds to monsoon season for the Himalayas. Now, we're going to be classifying landslide types, and this is where you really do get into the specific names of landslides. The first thing we're going to be looking at is the type of movement that occurs along a landslide. So the type of movement describes the actual internal mechanics of how the landslide mass is displaced. And you can see there are falls, there are topples and slides and spreads and flows. And we're going to be looking at each of these individually moving forward. We can also look at the type of material. The material in a landslide is usually either rock or soil or both. So we use, when it's unconsolidated material, like broken up pieces of rock, we usually use the term debris for really big stuff, or mud for very fine material, or even earth if it's fine material that has a lot of soil mixed into it. Conversely, we can use the term rock if it's actual big cohesive pieces of bedrock that are moving. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add that type of material and the type of movement together to get our different types of landslide events. We can also look at the rate of movement, and this falls under some classifications actually use the rate of movement, but what we're going to find is specific types of movements can vary in velocity quite a bit, but you can see creep is on the order of 1 millimeter to a centimeter per year. And so that's really, really, really small. We're talking on the order of tectonic plates moving, all the way up to rock falls and debris avalanches, some of which can move over 200 miles an hour. A lot of times we break it up into sort of a fast or slow sort of thing. And the slow moving landslides are the ones that you can't actually see moving. If you put a time lapse on it, you can watch it. But if you just stand there staring at it, you're not really going to notice much movement. And that's pretty darn slow.